A huge mass of ICE agents, mobilized, weapons drawn.
Across the city, thousands of immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE, agents have since been deployed to the Democratic-led city as Republican President Donald Trump intensifies his nationwide campaign to deport immigrants.
In 2003, in the aftermath of September 11th, the United States government created a new agency. Its stated purpose? To protect national security by enforcing immigration laws. Its name? Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. 22 years later, this agency has become one of the most controversial institutions in American government. To understand why, we need to look at what ICE does, how it operates, and what happens to the people who come into its custody. Before ICE existed, immigration enforcement was handled by the Immigration and Naturalization Service, or INS, which operated under the Department of Justice. The INS had existed since 1933, managing both immigration services and enforcement.
In the 1950s, the number of illegal aliens apprehended in a single year topped the 1 million mark, an all-time high.
After the attacks of September 11, 2001, Congress passed the Homeland Security Act of 2002. This legislation created the Department of Homeland Security and represented the largest government reorganization since the formation of the Department of Defense in the 1940s.
The new department will analyze threats, will guard our borders and airports, protect our critical infrastructure, and coordinate the response of our nation to future emergencies. The Department of Homeland Security will focus the full resources of the American government on the safety of the American people.
On March 1, 2003, ICE officially began operations. The new agency combined elements from two separate departments: the investigative and enforcement functions of the US Customs Service, which had been under the Treasury Department, and the interior enforcement operations of the INS.
To forestall what was often referred to as the Red Tide, Congress passed the Internal Security Act of 1950. Under the Act, un-American activities, including membership in the Communist Party, became grounds for deportation. The task of enforcing the law fell largely upon the INS.
ICE was given both civil and criminal authority to enforce immigration and customs laws. What Americans don't realize is that ICE's power and reach expanded significantly under President Barack Obama.
Under the cloak of darkness in Chicago,
Attack one, guys.
an immigration and customs enforcement team gears up for another long day, pursuing undocumented immigrants who have been convicted of crimes in the U.S.
Between 2009 and 2016, the Obama administration oversaw the deportation of approximately 2.4 million undocumented immigrants, earning him the nickname Deporter-in-Chief from immigrant rights advocates.
With one simple phrase, National Council of La Raza President Janet Murguia signaled the height of Hispanic American anger at U.S. President Barack Obama, saying, quote, "For us, this president has been the deporter-in-chief."
In 2009, Congress passed a budget that included a mandate requiring ICE to maintain a minimum of 33,400 detention beds at all times. This essentially created a quota system for immigration detention. And ICE's budget nearly doubled from $3.3 billion in the early Bush years to $6 billion by the end of Obama's first term. According to its official website, ICE's mission is to protect national security and public safety by enforcing laws related to border control, customs, trade, and immigration. The agency operates through three main divisions: enforcement and removal operations, homeland security investigations, and the Office of the Principal Legal Advisor. But what does this look like in practice? Under the Trump administration, ICE operations expanded dramatically. The agency began conducting raids in what had previously been considered sensitive locations, like schools, churches, hospitals, and even immigration courthouses where people were appearing for legally required hearings.
Traditionally, churches have been considered places of refuge, sanctuaries for all who seek it. But that changed in January, And during a recent community event here at Casa de Dios, a community member, a church member, was detained, leaving many feeling as if they have no place to turn.
At the heart of ICE's operations is its detention system. As of December 2025, ICE was holding nearly 68,500 people in detention, a 78% increase from the previous year. These facilities are operated through a mix of ICE-run centers, private for-profit prison companies, and contracts with local jails. ICE operates nearly 200 detention facilities nationwide. In 2025 alone, the agency opened or reopened more than 130 facilities. Many of these are located in remote areas of Louisiana and Texas, far from families, legal support, and oversight. Huobing Xie, Brian Rayo Carzon, Geraldo Lunas Campos. These are just 3 of the 32 people who died in ICE custody in 2025. It was the deadliest year for immigration detention since 2004. The 2025 death toll exceeded even 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic ravaged detention facilities. By January 2026, 4 more people had already died in ICE custody. What conditions lead to these deaths?
Was taken to the first detention center in chains.
When I got there, I was like, where am I? It looks like a prison.
They took us to the booking. We're asked to strip naked in front of each other. I never expect this in America.
Reports from detainees, attorneys, and investigators paint a disturbing picture. At a Massachusetts ICE field office, 35 to 40 men were packed into a windowless room with 1 toilet and no privacy, forced to sleep head to toe on concrete floors. At Florida's Chrome Service Processing Center, people received only 1 cup of rice and a glass of water per day. Medical neglect appears to be systemic. Consider the case of a young man who developed severe pain and swelling. Nurses prescribed antibiotics and pain medication. But medical records show how he rarely received his prescriptions. ICE confiscated his medication when transferring him between facilities. His symptoms worsened until fellow detainees had to assist him to medical care in a wheelchair because he couldn't walk. 3 of the deaths in 2025 were apparent self-exits. 27-year-old Brian Rayo Carzon was found unresponsive in his cell with a blanket wrapped around his neck. Even these numbers may not tell the full story. According to the ACLU, ICE has been accused of regularly releasing individuals from custody shortly before death, which allows the agency to avoid counting these deaths in official reports. In one case, a transgender asylum seeker in New Mexico was given parole documents to sign while in hospital bed after being denied medical care at the Otero Processing Center for weeks. She died 4 days later, never leaving the hospital.
She was detained at the border and brought to the Cibola County Correctional Center before she died in ICE custody.
Other cases included men who were released from ICE detention while hospitalized in a coma. When journalists and advocates investigate these deaths, they often find discrepancy in official reports. Perhaps most disturbing are the conditions for children. After a hiatus during the Biden administration,
poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Family detention resumed in April 2025 at the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas. Attorneys and advocates who have visited describe nightmarish conditions. Children reported being given food with mold or worms. Water containers throughout the facility had visible mold and algae. Dozens of families have been held for more than 80 days, some for over 100 days, in violation of the Flores Settlement Agreement, which limits child detention to only 20 days. Becky Willozin of the National Center for Youth Law, who visited Delhi, described the psychological impact. One mother explained that a previously happy toddler was starting to hit her and hit himself in the face because he was so distraught over the conditions. We have seen otherwise really well-adjusted kids devolve into constant sadness, nightmares, and crying every night. In 2025, ICE sent approximately 600 immigrant children into the federal shelter system, more than the previous 4 years combined. This represents a new wave of family separations occurring across the country, not just at the border. Yeah, so they're separating families too.
And then final question, do you have any moral or ethical qualms about detaining a 5-year-old on his way back from preschool?
I've got no qualms about making America a safer place when we arrest those illegal aliens.
On January 7, 2026, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good was fatally shot by ICE agent Jonathan Ross. Good, a mother of 3, was in her car when Ross fired 3 shots to her face, killing her. Local officials said Good was acting as a legal observer during protests against ICE operations in South Minneapolis. Federal officials claimed the agent acted in self-defense, saying Good tried to run him over. But Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, after viewing the video footage, stated, "Having seen the video myself, I want to tell everybody directly that this is bullshit."
They're ripping families apart, they're sowing chaos on our streets, and in this case, quite literally killing people. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit.
The New York Times noted that Agent Ross's career was emblematic of a broader militarization of immigration enforcement. From serving in the Iraq War, to Border Patrol in Texas, to ICE operations in Minnesota. One writer described it as an Iraq veteran in tactical gear, surrounded by comrades swarming a car, firing point blank at its driver. In the face. The killing sparked nationwide protests. Thousands took to the streets in cities across America, chanting Good's name and demanding ICE leave their communities.
Residents are mired in paranoia as they face what many here feel is an occupation. More than 2,000 federal agents have been deployed to the Twin Cities, an effort targeting Minnesota's large Somali population.
We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country.
On January 23rd, Minnesota held a one-day statewide general strike. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called for investigations. Governor Tim Walz proclaimed January 9th Renee Good Day. The violence doesn't only affect undocumented immigrants. As we've seen, research by ProPublica found more than 170 incidents of US citizens being detained by immigration officials in 2024.
I got rights to talk, bro.
You got no right here.
I do.
You're illegal, brother. Get up.
I was born and raised here.
What about him?
I was born and raised here. I have the right to talk.
Okay, all right.
No, once she got that proper spread on him, he was gone.
You're funny, bro. Who's funny? You guys sound like shit.
He does.
Starting to resist more now.
We're gonna end up shooting somebody. If he keeps going like this, they're gonna start fighting.
In 2025, at least 20 citizens were detained for longer than a day without access to phone call or legal counsel. In one case, a 10-year-old American girl with brain cancer was deported with her parents and 4 siblings to Mexico after being stopped at an immigration checkpoint while on their way to an emergency medical appointment.
Donald Trump's immigration crackdown has resulted in a 10-year-old U.S. citizen girl with brain cancer and her 4 U.S. citizen siblings all deported with their undocumented parents when they were on their way to an emergency medical appointment.
A man with serious disabilities sadly passed away after his father, who had been his primary caregiver, was detained by ICE back in October. During a scheduled annual check-in at the Dallas ICE field office, Mahir Tarabishi, who arrived in the US from Jordan in 1994, was detained and taken into custody. He was a law-abiding US resident that hadn't missed his yearly check-ins with ICE since 2006. Never been late to one, and hadn't broken any laws.
But last fall, Maher presented himself at a Dallas field office to fulfill the conditions of his supervision order, only this time he was arrested and detained by ICE. His family fought to try and reunite father and son, but they were unsuccessful. And then just a few days ago, Wael passed away at just 30 years old, while his father sat in an ICE detention center.
US military veterans have been targeted. The Guardian identified 8 instances where veterans were detained for protesting ICE operations and accused of being Antifa-aligned terrorists.
If you said Antifa is the #1 domestic terrorist organization operating in the United States, I just need to know where they are, how many people. I don't want a name. I don't want anything like that. Just how many people have you identified with the FBI that Antifa is made of?
Well, the investigations are active.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
One Marine Corps veteran sued after being tackled from behind and beaten by ICE agents in an incident captured on video.
What appears to be a federal employee slam him to the ground. Then others come in and drag him. You see Darren appearing to be pummeled.
Even the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Ras Baraka, was arrested by ICE agents on May 9th, 2025. While attempting to conduct congressional oversight at a detention facility. After his release, he stated, "The reality is this, I didn't do anything wrong." As detention expanded in 2025, oversight collapsed. The number of detention facility inspections dropped by 36.25% compared to the previous year, even as the detained population increased by 78%. The Trump administration effectively shuttered internal oversight offices. The Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which had documented abuses of due process, excessive force, and SA in ICE detention, saw hundreds of staff cuts.
They're going to make mistakes sometimes. ICE is going to be too rough with somebody, or, they're dealing with rough people. They're going to make a mistake. Sometimes it can happen. We feel terribly. I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who had the tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible thing. Everybody would say, ICE would say the same thing. But when I learned her parents and her father in particular I hope he still is, but I don't know, was a tremendous Trump fan. He was all for Trump, loved Trump.
The Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, which investigated more than 10,000 formal complaints annually and conducted routine facility inspections, was streamlined to remove roadblocks to enforcement. Andrew Free, a lawyer who founded the #DetentionKills project, warns all signs point to increasing amounts of suffering, increases in preventable harm, and ultimately death. The tragedy is that there are oversight systems and accountability mechanisms that were developed over years to reduce death rates in ICE detention. To understand what ICE represents and what it should be done about it, we need to examine different perspectives on immigration enforcement. From a conservative viewpoint, ICE serves as a necessary function, enforcing the nation's immigration laws and protecting national security. Supporters argue that the agency targets individuals who have violated immigration law and that any enforcement agency will face criticism when executing difficult tasks. They maintain that detention conditions meet standards and that proper procedures are followed. Many Democrats and liberal organizations advocate for reforming ICE. They argue that immigration enforcement is necessary, but that ICE has become too aggressive and lacks accountability. This perspective supports comprehensive immigration reform, protections for DACA recipients, a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, and stronger oversight of detention facilities. Some Democratic officials have called for abolishing ICE but replacing it with a reformed immigration enforcement agency.
Breaking news on Capitol Hill that speaks to what Olivia was just mentioning, a disagreement over how to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It means that your elected representatives in the Senate failed to advance a funding package to avert that U.S. government shutdown. Democratic leaders like Senator Chuck Schumer are now demanding reforms to how ICE carries out its operations and how President Trump's immigration agenda is implemented in the days ahead.
Socialist organizations like the Democratic Socialists of America take a more radical stance, arguing that ICE cannot be reformed and must be abolished entirely. This perspective sees immigration enforcement as fundamentally tied to capitalism and class warfare. From this viewpoint, borders serve to create a vulnerable workforce that employers can exploit. By criminalizing certain people as illegal, the system creates a class of workers with no legal protections, who can be paid lower wages, used to undercut union organization, and then deported when they become inconvenient. As Tempest magazine argues, ICE is not simply a flawed agency in need of reform. It's an institution that upholds the interest of capital by creating a vulnerable workforce, dividing workers, and normalizing state repression. Socialists point to the historical precedent. Before ICE, the Immigration and Naturalization Service conducted raids and deportations for decades, even in the decade before 9/11. Deportation proceedings were already more than half of what they became afterwards. Therefore, they argue, simply replacing ICE with another agency won't solve the fundamental problem. The socialist analysis connects immigration enforcement to broader economic forces. People migrate because of global inequalities created by capitalism, resource extraction, exploitative labor practices, climate change, and US-backed wars and trade agreements that destabilize other nations. Workers are simply responding to these conditions by seeking survival and opportunity. Rather than enforcement, socialists advocate for open borders and full rights for all workers. Dan Labarthe, writing for the Democratic Socialists of America, argues, the slogan immigrant rights or workers' rights is not mere rhetoric. The defense of migrants and refugees is pivotal to the struggle of the entire global working class. Allowing the state to treat one group as disposable undermines the rights of all workers. This perspective sees ICE as part of a broader system of social control. The infrastructure built for immigration enforcement, surveillance, detention, militarized policing, can be and has been used against other marginalized groups. As Metro DC, DSA stated, the way the powerful prey upon the most vulnerable is the way they would like to treat all of us if given the opportunity. Socialist organizations like DSA have been active in the Abolish ICE movement since its inception in 2017. Sean McElwee and Ariel Smirnoff, who helped popularize the #AbolishICE slogan, worked with the socialist and progressive organizations to mainstream the demand. The movement gained significant momentum in 2018 during family separations at the border, and has resurged in 2026 following recent killings by ICE agents. The socialist platform typically includes unconditional amnesty for all undocumented people, full civil and legal rights for all immigrants, an end to detention and deportation, dismantling the border wall, and addressing root causes of migration by ending US imperialism and unfair trade practices. In 2025, at least 32 people died in ICE custody, the most in over 2 decades. Hundreds of children were separated from their families. Thousands more were held in conditions that violate both domestic law and international human rights standards. American citizens were detained sometimes for days, without access to legal counsel. And at least 2 people, Rene Good and Alex Pretty, were killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis alone. These are facts. Documented, reported, verified by multiple independent sources. What do we do with these facts? Do we accept this as a necessary cost for border security? Do we reform the system while maintaining enforcement? Or do we fundamentally reimagine what immigration policy could look like in a more just society?
They're the domestic terrorists. They're riding through the streets, just snatching people out of bus stops, taking people as they're going to work, grabbing people in their schools. They're harassing people. They tell lies like they're going after dangerous criminals and making the city safer. They're not going after criminals. They're going after people that are working, paying taxes, taking care of their families, and they're making our city way more unsafe.
The choice is ours.